Welcome to Sindhi Boli Otak. In this episode, I will be talking to Mr. Mohan Gehani, who is an author, translator, research scholar, essayist, playwright, and poet. Born in 1938 in Sindh, Gehani's literature contributions span over decades, with more than 30 published works in both English and Sindhi. You can find more about Mr. Gehani on his website, mohangehani.com. You will find there many of his written works accessible, readable, and downloadable free of charge. His works include essays and critiques, biographies, historical literature, poetry, translation, and lot more. I hope you will visit his site and benefit from reading of his writings. Now, without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Mr. Gehani. Welcome to Sindhi Boli Otak podcast. To listeners and viewers, I'm so pleased today to have Shri Mohan Gehani in this conversation with me. Mr. Gehani, welcome to Sindhi Boli Otaka podcast.
It's my pleasure.
Mr. Gehani, we have agreed to talk today about several aspects of language, and I hope this will be one of the many conversations we will have. But today we will focus on few questions and benefit from the wealth of knowledge that you possess about Sindhi and literature and Sindhi language. And not only Sindhi language and literature, you are a very well-read literary person and who has written 30 books also. So today, my first question to you, Mr. Gehani, is before we go into a question of scripts used for Sindhi language, I want to refer to your essay on Sindhi scripts, where you mention change in the way concept of language has changed from binary or bipolar notion in which language was thought to be constituted of two elements. The sounds, characters on the paper, for example, were like hardware signifiers, markers, while ideas and concepts that they were conveying were more of mental signifiers of language. Would you like to elaborate on that a little more for our audience to understand? I believe you want to talk about this in 3-4 parts of it. So if you could please enlighten us on first bipolarity of language.
Yes, it will be my pleasure. But then one thing, we have to begin at the beginning.
Okay.
At the beginning itself, I have to say the language happens to be the oldest tradition of man. And the linguistic areas are created by nature. Linguistic areas are not created by politicians. Linguistic areas are created by nature.
You mean the geographic areas where language is spoken?
Yeah. And the people of that particular area share so many common traits of history. It is conditioned by history. It is conditioned by geography. It is conditioned by influx of so many tribes in ancient times and even at present times. And it is a continuous process. Language is just like a river. River has bends, river has tributaries, rivers have their diversions, their canals. So it is very difficult to conceive the language as a biological product.
Yeah.
To say that a particular language is born out of another language.
Mm-hmm.
It may branch out. But in order to establish itself as a language, it needs a prerequisite historical,
yeah,
and other cultural, literary background. Now, if we go to seals of Mohenjo-daro,
yeah,
Indus Valley civilization, there we have signs, but we do not know the concept of those signs.
Yeah.
because the language comes first and the script comes afterwards. And the script comes much later.
Mm.
And the script also is mostly determined by political, economical considerations,
Yes.
mostly.
Yes.
Maybe sometimes even in some languages, they may be influenced by religious considerations also in
Hmm.
a particular section of a society.
Right.
So when I speak of a language, I speak of a continuity of a language of that particular region. And in my opinion, the
Yeah.
language is a historical experience of that particular community in that area. It
Yeah.
encapsulates that entire experience in all its dimensions. So the language is a part of a core identity of any individual of that particular area. Because you cannot divest a man of his core identity as such. Because the language and the literature and the cultural values create a particular ethos.
Mm.
And that ethos comes with a certain type of value structure. As far as Sindhi language is concerned, I'll tell you
Yeah.
that the most characteristic social aspect of Sindhi area, Sindhi Hindus as is, whereas the rest of the Indian society is based on caste system.
Caste system. Yes.
And the caste happens to be one of their core identities.
Mm.
But in Sindhi society, it is a geographical identity.
Yes. It's
That's
not
the
caste
part
based
of
identity.
it is not a caste-based identity.
Yes.
We speak of Shikarpuri, we speak of Hyderabadi, we speak of Sahiti, we speak of that particular geographical
Yeah.
area.
Even Seraiki and Ladi are regional concepts. Seraiki is northern Sindh and
Exactly.
Serai and Ladi is the
Yes,
southern
yes,
Sindh.
yes,
Yes.
yes. And the poetry, as for the literature is concerned, it predates, as Rigveda says,
Mm.
that of writing, any writing matter. And
Yeah.
that's why we had a tradition of Shruti and Smriti,
Yes. Oral tradition.
oral tradition, that you have to pronounce a particular word in a particular way, you have to memorize it, and you have to hear, and you have to pronounce it in a particular way. And that's how the literature could be transmitted to the future generation. Because there was no script to convey the literature to the future generation apart from that. So the
Yes.
script comes much later.
Yes.
When Ferdinand da Saussure, who was a Swiss national, was anthropologist, philosopher, and he had expertise in sound.
Yeah.
He developed the philosophy of a language, the word, not being a stand-alone, as
Mm.
we find in the dictionary.
Mm.
As we were taught in logic in our colleges, that every word has a denotation and connotation.
Mm.
He said, no, it is a part of a particular system.
Mm.
So he said it is a part of a particular structure as a such, the word in itself. We have to consider the word as a structure.
Mm.
And if we look at it, all the old traditions, religions, they consider the language to be a word to be bipolar.
Okay, what does bipolar mean?
In Rigveda,
Mhm.
we say Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. The light and darkness, life and death, truth and untruth, they are counterposed as bipolar entities.
Mm.
Even in old Iranian religion, we have a concept of Ahur Man and Ahur Mazda. So the entire understanding was based on opposites.
Mm.
But then I will divert a bit for a minute.
Yeah.
In Christian ethos, Abrahamic religions, we have 10 commandments of ethics.
Yeah.
Thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do this.
Yeah.
But in the Indian context, that is missing. We do not have any commandment. I'll give you a very interesting example. Bal Gangadhar Tilak in his Gita Rahasya preface writes, if cow is running away and the butcher is following him, and he asks you whether you have seen any cow, yeah, it has gone.
Mm.
If you say no, even your lie is better than the truth.
Right.
Here the truth becomes a contractual
It's a relative concept here.
concept.
Mm.
What are the reasons? I'll not go into it. I have thought about it, that we'll discuss later.
Yeah.
When we meet for some other podcast.
Okay.
So, for example, the word dharma, it does not translate into a religion as it is done in the Abrahamic religions.
Yes.
Because the
Religion is not
concept,
equal to dharma.
we do not have the concept of one book, one prophet,
Yes.
one deity. We do not have.
Yeah.
That entire organizational structure that goes with a particular religion, from papacy to bishop and padre, we do not have that.
Mm.
That is absent.
Mm.
So some words which we have tried to borrow from others, and some words which have been imposed, they have played havoc with our understanding of history, our understanding of sociology, our understanding of the. Similar is a case with Rashtra, nationalism as we call it. We have that, we have Maharashtra, we have Saurashtra. How do you equate them?
Mm.
That becomes very difficult. So the languages, for certain reasons, move along different trajectories, along different pathways, and they, as I said, they encapsulate in themselves their historical
And cultural
and
aspects of community.
experience,
Yes.
collective experience.
Yeah. So
So
language is a composite concept which has got some literal meanings, but actually it's like a vehicle in which the experiences of a community living in a particular area also travel with that language.
language. Now, coming to literature,
Yeah.
world literature as such, I'll not confine myself only to Sindhi literature.
Yeah.
being a student of English literature myself. After Renaissance and Romantic moment and the realistic literary moment, we had, after the Second World War, plethora of isms in literature, existentialism,
Yeah.
absurdity.
Phenomenology.
So many trends that. And in my opinion, that's my opinion, personal opinion, because a socialist ideology or a Marxist ideology, there was a Cold War. And that Cold War did not extend only to the politics. That Cold War extended even to the mind space of the people.
Probably more in the mind space.
And all these philosophies, Freudian philosophy, existentialist philosophy, absurdity, all were lumped together and counterposed against the progressive ideology that carried along with it the seeds of humanistic philosophy. Rational and humanistic philosophy was counterposed with understanding of dreams, exaggeration, metamorphosis of Kafka,
Yes.
some hyperbolic images, fantasies, and nightmares. They became a diet of literature.
Mm.
And at that time, in 1960, Jacques Derrida went a step further, and he said that the writer does not exist. Every writing is reader-centric.
Mm.
It is for a reader to read, deconstruct the writing, and then reconstruct it.
Mm. So reader makes the meaning.
Reconstruct the meaning.
Right. Good.
That way,
Mm.
even the connotation, denotation, hierarchies of the language, the words, they all were abolished. But it was
Okay.
just like Plato's ideal republic,
Okay.
because we did not have such an enlightened reader to read, deconstruct, and reconstruct,
Mm.
because they wanted to exile the story from the story itself. You have to be, there is it's not necessary that the story should have a sequence.
Mm.
You can begin at anything, come go and forth any number of times. And the
Yes.
reader had no patience.
So we moved from the structured kind of concept of the language that the Swiss scholar you quoted, to a deconstructivist, reader-focused evolution of language and literature by 1960s. How does that come to affect the way our language, Sindhi language, has evolved over this period? I know that British conquest of Sindh had a big impact on particularly the script.
Yeah. Now, coming to your question,
Yeah.
I feel it needs a twofold approach.
Okay.
On the one side, the language, and another side, we are speaking of literature as such.
Mm-hmm.
Till 1960 or 61 or 70, early 70s, it was a progressive literary trend that was predominant in Sindhi literature, because that imbibed humanistic, realistic traits of they were in society.
Mm.
But as during pre-partition period, the source languages for our scholars and writers used to be English and Urdu, or the poets, Urdu. Most of the poets were inspired by Urdu poetry, like Kishan Chand Bewas,
Right.
Hari Dilgir,
Yeah.
and this Prabhu Wafa. They were inspired by the Urdu poetry, reading of Urdu poetry as such. And by reading the Urdu poetry, they brought those traits in Sindhi literature. But after 70s, the source language happened to be Hindi. And in Hindi, there were groups, counter groups of writers.
Yeah.
Many interests. It happens everywhere. The human nature, you can't help it. Much of the literature of those periods was written as a counter narrative to the progressive literature.
Okay.
And that was reflected in our Sindhi literature also.
Okay.
The concept of absurdity,
right.
The concept of fantasy, the concept of escapism, the mutilated narrative
of Kafka.
All those things came into Sindhi literature also.
Okay. Okay.
And unfortunately, due to controversy of script and non-utilitarian aspect of the Sindhi language, and it took us 20 years of struggle to get our language included in the constitution.
Yes.
Sindhi people lost their language, the interest in their language. And now we are confronted with the generation which is reading Sindhi language in Devanagari script, mostly in Hindi-speaking areas.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, we are mostly concentrated in Hindi-speaking areas, apart from Maharashtra and Gujarat.
Yes.
And in Gujarat also in certain areas, because of certain political considerations and certain orientation, in certain pockets, Devanagari is predominant, whereas in other parts, it's in the Arabic script that's continuing.
Yes.
But in Delhi, in Rajasthan, in Madhya Pradesh, it's total washout.
Yes. So Arabic script has suffered.
And even in Maharashtra. Now, when I spoke to Dr. Sandhya Kundnani, who's taking MA classes in Sindhi in Bombay University, I was very happy to find that there are some students who are taking up Sindhi at MA level also.
Yes.
But she said that most of them depend on Devanagari script.
Yeah. Yes.
And unfortunately, in Devanagari script, we do not have Sindhi books. So those who are opting to read Sindhi in Devanagari books, they are not connected to literary traditions of Sindhi literature.
Yes.
And they do not have access to wide body of Sindhi literature.
Which is in Arabic.
What happens?
With the wide body of literature is in Arabic.
Yeah. Because in Arabic, we have the literature.
Yes.
We can be connected. And today, in this space age, those who know the Arabic script can access the literature film across the border.
Yes, digital books are available now.
Digital books are available now.
Yeah,
But that is not the case with Devanagari.
because they have not been
With the
written in
result, those
Devanagari.
who are writing in Devanagari, my
Yeah,
problem is those who are writing in Devanagari,
yeah,
their vocabulary is very limited,
yeah,
and that is a cause of concern for me, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah.
But then, if you look at it, we are a minuscule minority. We are at the most 5 billion people here. When we came here in India, there was a debate whether we were 8 lakhs or we were 10 lakhs.
Yeah,
And some zealots went to 12 lakhs.
yeah.
When the population of India has grown 4 times, we could not.
Yeah, we would not be
At the most, we
any
could-
different in the growth. Yeah, that is true. So, Mr. Gehani, for the
because
benefit of
because our social leaders say that we are 2 crores.
yeah, yeah. So that is true. I mean, we would have grown at the same population growth rate, which normal population growth rate is in India. So our numbers should reflect that. So
Maybe a little less, because
yes,
we do not have any section of society which is below poverty line.
yes, yes, and there is
We
a
do not have
correlation.
any, and most of us, 99% of us are literate people.
Yes,
Education is there in our society.
yes. So that directly affects the growth rate. Also, we know that there is a connection between literacy and so, Mr. Gehani, for the benefit of these young generation, the recent generations that have grown in India, for them, I know that many of them are not going to the Sindhi medium schools, so they don't know much about Sindhi. So for their benefit, would you like to briefly tell our listeners about different scripts that have been historically used for Sindhi language? Because in your essay, you said, I had known that, Devanagari, Arabic, Hatwanaki, Gurumukhi were also used. But in your essay, you say almost up to 10 different scripts were used. So can you throw a little
10
light
to,
on the different scripts that have been historically
10 to
used?
10 to 10 to 13, 10 to 13.
Okay.
It
Can
was
you
10,
throw some
10
light
to
on that?
13. Yes. Initially, the script that was used by fakirs of Shah Latif, because Shah Latif, it to say himself, did not write anything.
And Shah Latif was in 17th century.
13th century. He did not
Yes.
write anything himself. So his fakirs used to note down his poetry.
Right. And that was in Arabic?
That was in Arabic script.
Okay.
It was called Abu Hassan Sindhi.
Abu
It was
Hassan
a
Sindhi.
Sindhi variation, Abu Hassan Sindhi.
Okay.
Understand? And then Swami was writing in Gurumukhi.
Okay. Yeah. Sami means Chenrai, but Chenrai Sami.
Swami.
Who,
He has to
who
write in Gurumukhi.
he was writing in Gurumukhi. Okay.
Yes. And the first Sindhi book that was printed in Devanagari
Okay.
by a British commissioner, because Bombay became a part of Bombay presidency, and these Britishers came from Bombay presidency.
Uh-huh.
For them, it was necessary to learn Marathi.
Right.
Then you only Devanagari.
Okay. Okay.
And then you only Devanagari. They were not conversant with the Persian Arabic script.
So the first Sindhi book printed was in Devanagari script.
Devanagari. It was Trump or some other stack or Trump. I do not remember the exact name. At this age, I am likely to forget the exact names. It was a stack or a Trump. That was maybe first or among the first 5.
Right.
And then we had a tradition of Hattavaraka. Now, Hattavaraka was a sort of a code language in which accounts used to be kept.
Mm.
And that Hattavaraka does not have vowels.
It doesn't have vowels. Okay.
It doesn't have vowels.
But the script is Arabic.
The script is not Arabic.
Okay.
It is some indigenous script.
Okay, so it is not even
My
Arabic.
father, no, not even Arabic.
Okay.
And it is written just like English,
Oh, it's
from left to
left to
right.
right. It's left to right.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
left to right.
Okay.
Because that way a different guild of merchants had different scripts. It was
Okay, so
sort of a code language.
they wanted to keep the trade secrets between their small groups.
Their
Okay.
account books confidential. So
Okay.
that only people of their clan or their family, they would be able to understand what is written.
Oh, that is very
My father
interesting.
used to, my father knew this script, and he used to jokingly tell us, Babo Ajmer view aaya, Babo Ajmadi view aaya, there's no difference.
Okay, so that means there must be infinite variety of Hatwanaki script because every merchant class
Yes,
will
see,
create their own variation.
yes. No, and another thing. At that time, the literacy was a personal accomplishment.
Say more about that.
Literacy was a personal accomplishment. It was a person who used to be educated. How many people used to be educated?
Hmm.
How many people were educated?
Right.
Would know.
Yeah.
Because the concept of a mass education in a classroom did not arise.
Yeah.
Even the system of education was that if you had to learn Persian language, that was the official language during meets, time of meets,
Hmm.
you had to go to Mullah or Maulvi to learn that language
Yeah.
in a mosque.
Yeah.
And there was a saying, Farsi Gode Charsi. If you learn Persian, you will be able to ride the horse.
Yes, you will prosper. It's like passing the civil service exam.
Like a something like that.
Yes.
So that was the system at that time. And being a multiplicity of these things, because as I had written in my article, that Sindhi has borrowed from Turkish,
Hmm.
their vocabulary from Persian, from Sanskrit, indigenous words. So for a linguist, it may not affect a layman. It is necessary to trace the root of a word.
Hmm.
For that purpose, because when the words came from a different lands, they had a different type of pronunciations. For example, Galicho, when I say Ga, nowadays our students do not know the difference between Galicho and Gada.
Ga and
Gada.
Ga. Ga and Ga. Ah, yes.
Ga में,
Yes.
R में,
Yeah.
K में, कलम हो जाए या कुत्तो हो जाए,
Hmm.
उन्होंने लगाल सागिया.
You can help me understand. One of the problems I have faced studying Sindhi is that when I look at dictionaries, various dictionaries, we have Paramanand Mevaram, the latest one being Sindhology Trilingual Dictionary, and I have also seen George Steck's original one. Other one is Satram Sahil's Sindhi to Sindhi Dictionary. So one complaint I have against all these dictionaries is that they don't give us the etymology of word, the origin of word. Like as you say, some of the words have been borrowed from Turkish, some words have come from Farsi. Obviously, a lot of words are from Sanskrit. But we don't have a dictionary that, like if you look at the Oxford English Dictionary, you can find out the origin of the word. So why do you think we have lagged in clarifying the origin of, because I love stories of word, they retain our attention and interest in the language.
The main problem here, though we had many linguistic scholars in India, we had Professor Khubchandani, we had Satish Rohra as a linguist,
Yeah.
we had this Parso Gidwani as a linguist. Yeah. So we had many linguists in our midst. So Sahib Bijani tells me that Sahaj Kosh, which has not been published as yet, which went into wrong hands, contains these,
Roots.
etymological roots of the words. All these, things need government help and patronage. And unfortunately, we do not have it. I understand in Sindh this work is being undertaken.
Okay.
And then you see, in the process of globalization, when you do not have even a single private school of Kannada in Bangalore, you do not have single private school of Marathi in Bombay, you do not have a single private school in Hindi. So,
Yes.
Sindhi being a part, most of the Sindhi being a part of a aspirational class and other communities, they are going towards the English.
Yeah.
They are going towards their children are studying in English.
Yeah. So
in that context, I would add something, that if we want to build the bridges for future generations to come back to explore their roots, we need to provide something in English language.
Okay.
And at the same time, in the same manner, I do not mind having Roman as an additional script for Sindhi language.
Okay. That's very helpful thought to conclude our today's discussion. Another very wide-ranging discussion. You started very high level about the literary movements of 1960s and how that switch takes place, and how the constructionism that came out in the social sciences also affected the literature, and how words carry two meanings. One is a literal meaning, another is the cultural heritage of a community. And I think that point, I was struck by your point about that in your essay, which I will link to the podcast, that quote that Nehru has given. You have given Nehru's quote. I did not know Nehru knew so much about languages.
Yes. No, he was a scholar.
Yeah.
He was an enlightened person, whatever today's politicians may say about him.
Yeah. So
but he was a person who wanted to take India to the scientific temper.
Yes. So that point, coming back to language, was that even if we use Roman or Devanagari script to make sure that language somehow lives and flourishes, but still that what that quote does is that it associates the script, as you guys started by saying, that a script is not just a script, it is also the lived experience that is carried through that language. And if you change the simple script, it will, in some way, you will be actually losing a little bit of the spirit behind that word.
It is not a question of changing the script. I don't stand for I don't stand for change of the script. I stand for additional script.
Okay.
I don't ultimately. Who are we to change the script? What mandate do we have?
No, we don't have.
What mandate do we have? So we can only add something, have an additional script, as an additional script, not as a substitute. No.
Yes. So we still want the language to convey as a vehicle to take us from experience of one generation to another and add in that experience as we live through our lives. You are seeing scripts are another like tributary to the language. The language is the bigger river in which now we may have scripts also contributing through different tributaries. Yes. It's like Narmada River, and then we have taken a lot of canals out of Narmada River.
Yes. So canals will continue.
But the main river should still remain as it is, because the literature is sitting in that script, Arabic script.
Sindh have been going out of Sindh since hundreds of years.
Yes. Yes. And with them has been traveling our Sindhi culture all over world.
Yeah, with all over world.
And it has been two-way flow, isn't it? We have also been bringing that culture back and forth.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is always a two-way. It is always
Yes.
a two-way. Those, Baloch clans who came to Sindh, because Kaloras and Talpurs, they were
Mm.
Baloch.
Mm.
Now they have been assimilated
Yes.
in Sindh.
Yes. Yes. So on that very
Two-way,
profound insight about the assimilation and continuity of language and the culture that flows through it two ways, I would like to conclude today's session here, and then hopefully we'll catch up in near future, Dada, again. Thank
My
you for
pleasure.
your time
This is
from
my
Sindhi Boli
pleasure.
Hota. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please subscribe to Sindhi Boli Otak channel on YouTube and audio podcast channels. Also, share with your friends. It helps.